Afternoon, Intuitives. Wanted to discuss a topic that we as INFJs usually wonder about at some point, and that's why INFJs, us, are so interested in the Myers-Briggs and so interested in learning about the different personalities, particularly ours. And there's a couple different reasons for that. First is, growing up as an INFJ, especially as a male INFJ, you grow up usually being the only one of your kind. Like, you don't really know anybody who thinks the way you do, has the same code of honor, code of integrity, etc. I mean, being a male demisexual INFJ as a teenager is rough. You're a freak, you're an outcast, and you think you're the only one. So it's comforting to know that, there are others like us out there, albeit male INFJs being the rarest male or female of any of the 16 types, but know that you're not alone. And that's really important for us. And as INFJs, we like self-reflection. We tend to overthink just about everything, and we want to recognize patterns and find the deeper meanings of things. So by studying the Myers-Briggs, we can recognize patterns like, traits in different people. For example, like traits or patterns in, say, like women that we wanted to date in our 20s, and either we were, not brave enough to try, or more than often they were already in a relationship when we became friends or acquaintances. I know I did, and it was interesting to me after reading into the Myers-Briggs to find there certainly were patterns amongst the majority of the women that I wish I did pursue or could have pursued if I, met at the right time, that I hit it off with, that we had a lot in common. For me, it's pretty obvious that they're mostly ENFJs. And that was really interesting to me to find that pattern and make that connection. As INFJs, we also find the Myers-Briggs very interesting to understand ourselves and to understand our very unique way of thinking. Our primary cognitive function is introverted intuition, which is rare and mysterious in its own right. I mean, even Carl Jung, who pioneered these things, didn't fully understand how introverted intuition truly works. And, Carl Jung himself was an INFJ. He's got some interesting books on Audible, too, if you feel like listening to him, if, you don't have a life like me. At least not a social life. But so that kind of stuff, we find it very interesting. Again, understanding how our brain works, the different patterns we see, how we can kind of almost clairvoyantly know things before it happens, but really it's because we can subconsciously put connections and patterns together and usually are right. I mean, I've been told, I'm sure most of you have been told, watching TV with an INFJ is a pain in the ass because we can usually guess most of the time what the actors are going to say before they say it, and like, ooh, plot twists, and this is going to happen, and that doesn't work on us. We'll get it almost every time. It's kind of fun. People kind of look at you like you're some kind of clairvoyant witch, and it's like, yeah. But not all of us are witches. I am, but not all of us INFJs are witches. And studying the Myers-Briggs also gives us insight in not only to what kind of people we're drawn to for friends or potential romantic relationships, we also notice patterns in the kind of people that we tend to have conflicts with. Again, for me, that seems to be primarily, but not always, and not all, but the majority of male ENTPs. They come off as very smug, very arrogant, very self-important, very fake, and I tend to see right through that and call them out on it, particularly when they're trying to take advantage of someone, usually a female empath of some type, a lot of times an ENFJ, not always though. And they don't like being called out. Most people, at least in the early stages of them doing their game, won't see through them. And because INFJs are so rare and we seem to be the best at seeing through them, they're not used to that. They're not used to someone being around who can intuitively see right through them. But it was interesting to know the similar traits in the type of people, that I tended to call out over the years, and they all seem to fit that pattern of ENTP. The Myers-Briggs test again for INFJs, not only does it let us know we're not alone, it gives us insight into who we are, but it also, as I said, better helps us understand ourselves. And that's important to us because when you're, so rare like INFJs are, it's hard sometimes, especially for us when we're younger, to describe how we feel about certain things. I mean, we're very emotional, we're very, in our heads, but there's that disconnection of getting the thoughts from here out. We struggle with that, particularly in our younger days, and we struggle with confidence too. So that insight into our own personality is very valuable to us in order, to better understand why we think the way we do and do the things we do. And another major reason why we're so interested in the Myers-Briggs is that it's very interesting for us to have channels like this and the big channels to communicate with one another. Given our rarity, it's likely that as an INFJ, you don't know another INFJ, at least in your same age range. So you can't really, quote, compare notes or compare situations and scenarios that you went through with life with other people who think the same way. And it's very, comforting, sometimes embarrassing and funny to be able to discuss with others and see the patterns in what other INFJs went through, and once again lets us know that we are not alone. That's why, it's a big reason why this channel exists. Like I said, one of my major motivators for creating this channel was specifically to give advice and insights to younger INFJs in their teens and 20s, information that I wish I had 15 years ago when I was living that experience before and during the infancy of YouTube, when such videos, like all the INFJ channels produced, didn't exist, and I was kind of running blind. Because, like I said, it's unlikely you have an INFJ mentor who can tell you these things. So that's invaluable to us to better understand ourselves, to better understand our cognitive function, particularly introverted intuition, why we think the way we do, why we have such a strong moral code and a strong code of integrity. Understanding things that some other people and maybe even we don't understand before finding out about our personality, like the INFJ door slam. When I first read that, it's like, oh my God, that's me to a T. But understanding why we do that and the reasons why we would door slam somebody is very important, because sometimes then you can communicate to people like, look, I don't handle betrayal well at all. Like, if you cheat, we're done, and there ain't gonna be a second chance. Like, I may not, I probably won't be seeking revenge, but it's like, you are dead to me, and I want nothing to do with you. You made your choice of your own free will, and live with the consequences. That kind of thing. And it's nice to know, again, that we're not the only person who does that, because a lot of INFJs growing up believe we are the only one who are like us. We don't believe there are others. At least I certainly didn't. And from the correspondence I've had with other INFJs, they too, essentially thought they were the only one of their kind growing up. And it's very comforting to know you're not. So the reason that Myers-Briggs channels are so devoted to INFJs is because of our rarity, because of us seeking a need to better understand ourselves, for us to be able to communicate with other people like us, and for us to express our cognitive abilities amongst others who will understand. If you notice, some of the other less common types, also are pretty prominent within the channels too. I mean, there's a fair amount of ENFJs out there, ENFPs, etc. Most of the intuitive types are going to want to better learn and understand themselves, because we're driven by our feelings. We're not driven by, sensing. We're not sensors. We're not living in the moment. We need to understand the why of things. Why am I drawn to this person? Why can't I have a one night stand? Why do I hate this fake son of a bitch over here? We can't just live in the moment. We're very forward thinking and we're idealists and we're always seeking to better the world around us, to create positive change, and to keep reaching towards what we individually deem as our ideal life. And understanding yourself is a big part of that, and understanding the people that you're drawn to and the people that you can't stand is also a big part of that. So I would recommend anyone, who's an INFJ or any intuitive type, to watch channels like mine or much bigger ones or ones of other types if you're another type, but to understand your personality type so you can understand that you're not alone. Intuitives, we're only 30% of the population roughly. So it's very important for us to know these things, and it'll better help us seek out people who understand us and have the similar values as us, so we're not constantly being used and abused. Understanding how and why we are common targets for narcissists as empaths is important too, so we can see the patterns before they quote unquote get their hooks into us, and then we could potentially be scarred for life. To know those traits of types that target us for narcissistic abuse or any type of abuse or exploitation is invaluable for that reason. So we can see it before it's too late, before we get involved with that person, before we fall in that trap. And so we can, teach others who don't know those things the signs so that they can avoid having gone through what we went through. And channels like mine and, others do a much better job exist for that reason. Helping INFJs and other intuitive types understand themselves better helps stop us from being such common targets, and helps us understand ourselves and live better lives. So that's my reason behind why INFJs are so interested in the Myers-Briggs and why it's a good thing. Thank you for taking the time. Don't forget, never sell out your integrity and always trust your intuition. Please like and subscribe.